You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're, as usual, as always, without question, the hosts for this show. Which, of course, today, we're reviewing yet another episode of the fantastic Tales of the Jedi animation series that dropped in its entirety, I might add. This is not an episode-by-episode reveal or anything like that. It was back in, what was that, September? Was it September or October? I mean, we're only on episode 4,
October.
so it had to be in October. Yeah, it was October.
October.
Yeah, so we chose to review this thing pretty much on a week-by-week basis. Instead of just doing a bunch of... I actually thought of doing this as almost like an additional content kind of thing, to where we just we do what you did, basically, and that's watch every episode, and then just go and maybe take a day and knock out 6 reviews, and then just, release them that way. Just kind of drop it. But it's not how we do things around here. We're live every Monday and Friday at 8, so... Although this is taking up a lot of Mondays, but yeah, I gotta say, man, this is a really good one. And what I really found interesting about this particular episode is, again, really you could say the last 3, not the last 3, but other than episode 1. So if you just take episodes 2, 3, and 4, they all pretty much focus on Dooku's story. That was one of the things that I noticed right away about this thing, is that it focused on Dooku's story, and of course, as I said in the description of this thing, there's a lot of canon stuff, a lot in this episode. But so yeah, I mean, overall, I would say so far, I give it an enthusiastic thumbs up. It's probably my favorite episode of the season so far.
I could not wait until we got to this one. This is when I was just silently waiting.
You kept saying it too. You're kind of like, yeah, just wait. Yeah, just wait. I remember, what was funny was when I was watching it, when I was watching this episode, I was reflecting on our past reviews when you alluded to, yeah, just wait. I'm like, oh, yeah, now I understand what
Yeah, man. I mean, this is by far one of my favorite episodes out of this whole series. I mean, the other ones are still pretty great as well, but this by far is probably one of, if not my favorite, my second favorite.
Well, we only got 2 more episodes to go after this, so
yeah, and you'll understand why.
Yeah, I know. Only in the end will you understand.
All right, getting into your Palpatine early.
Yeah, well,
And this episode for me, man, was really cool because, as you just said, it has a lot of canon into it. I mean, it dealt with a lot of stuff from between episode 1 and episode 2, and then you see it kind of showed you, and this with these last few episodes, as you said, they've been focused on Dooku. You can see now why he went to the dark side. You know what I'm saying? Now we're starting to understand, okay, he almost kind of had an Anakin situation, here. And
put that in my notes.
What's really cool about that.
I took notes on this one. Kind of like what I do for Andor. Yeah. Well,
Wow.
I wasn't going to, because, look, these things are 15, 17 minutes tops, right? But the problem is that a lot of times, unless I rewatch it again, not too long before, it's there's points that you want to bring up, and then you sort of forget about it, and it becomes more about the macro than the details. By the way, Ronaldo's joined us.
Ronaldo, what's up?
But this one, because it just had so much, right? It was really dense as far as plot points go. I really wanted to make sure that, and again, I mean, it's not as extensive as Andor. I mean, this thing's only 15, 20 minutes tops, right? So, I mean, there's only so many notes that you can put in. Although I have an impressive amount, though. One of them you kind of alluded to is that I love how it sort of bookends um the whole Phantom Menace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it begins pretty much right after Qui-Gon had confronted Maul. And pretty much after when Qui-Gon goes in and he talks about, the whole confrontation or whatever, it's sort of like the aftermath. That's kind of where this episode
Yeah.
started. And then
Mm-hmm.
toward the end, it's basically pretty much like after Qui-Gon's death, and it's sort of happening around the same time as the funeral, like the funeral scene and that little procession and all that. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
happening around that time. So it perfectly bookends those things, which I thought was just really, really, really cool. Well, before we go on, Ronaldo basically has a comment that popped up here. I'm just waiting for it now. That here it comes. Sometimes it takes a while to get to this like text thing. He says, "This episode was great. Who would have thought that Yaddle would be an interesting character?" And yeah, we're gonna delve into that quite a bit, I imagine, because
Mm-hmm.
Yaddle did prove, and of course, it also shows. In talking about the canon again, it shows why you don't see her on the council, because a lot of people had actually asked that. They said, "Well,
Mm-hmm.
why isn't Yaddle on the council?" And this gives us that answer.
Yeah. I mean, let's just get into it. You
Yeah,
know,
let's do it, man.
so the whole thing is, this is what I loved about this was that one, you kind of saw that, the rumor mill of like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, the Sith Lord, right? Of course, everyone's talking about it because the Sith haven't been seen for over a millennia. So it's
Right.
kind of like, wait, someone encountered one of these, and you know, but leading up to that, we see Dooku before that even happens. Dooku is already going into the Jedi library to delete Camino from the Jedi archives, which once again, that's a episode 2 um plot hole fix, I guess, if you want to call it that, or plug if you want to use that terminology. Um so you have that, and then he kind of comes out and he kind of sees like, oh well, everybody's kind of like, what's all the commotion about? Like, it's like, okay, well, your former apprentice basically encountered a Sith Lord, and that's why everybody's like rumbling. So he's kind of like, oh, okay. So then he eventually runs into Qui-Gon, and then he kind of talks to him about it as he's walking with Jedi Master Yaddle, who's of the same species as Master Yoda, hence the name Yaddle, Yoda. All right. So, um, so they're having this whole conversation in the hallway, and he's talking about, yeah, well, Yaddle brings up the fact that, like, yeah, Qui-Gon's always been imaginative, much like you were. Well, yeah, that's a skill that's, unfortunately kind of gone away. Once again, just reinforcing um, his, I would say, his slowly descending confidence in the Jedi. That's where it's furthering that narrative. The fact that he's not as confident as that the Jedi can really do what they're saying they're supposed to be doing. And this is yet again one of those situations where um, he really feels like the Jedi have dropped the ball. So we have that. Then Qui-Gon eventually shows up. He's like, "Yeah, I would love to hear about this," and um, Yaddle kind of pretty much confirms what Dooku's been thinking. It's like, well, the council, you know, feels like we should just kind of take caution on it. He's like, so you don't believe him? She was like, well, no, I'm not saying I don't believe him. I'm just saying that we have to exercise caution before we just start, running around, starting, you know, throwing around the term Sith Lord all of a sudden. We need more details before we can just actually confirm that. Which I thought that was a wise move from a wise person. It's like, okay, like despite my personal beliefs on the matter, like for the better interest of everyone, let's just hold off and find out more information. But I believe it's possible,
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really cool because they're showing the juxtaposition of okay, how the council feels and how the wisdom of the council versus um Dooku's, his whole ideology. Um so then that was happened. And of course you had the conversation that Qui-Gon had with his old master about Obi-Wan. He was like, well, yeah, if Obi-Wan was, he was, yeah, I got to meet him one day. You always ran about this kid. I would love to
Yeah,
play
that
him.
was a
So that
nice
was
Easter egg.
yeah, so
Absolutely.
that was a nice one because of that conversation Obi-Wan had with Dooku was shame, Anakin would have never joined you. And
Mm-hmm.
they made that connection, which I thought that was sweet. Yeah, man. So that was an awesome point in that initial hallway conversation. And then you could kind of see that Dooku really um just really had love for Qui-Gon. Like he really like that was his Padawan, and that was somebody who was just almost kind of like him in a lot of ways. And so when he made the statement of, when the Yaddle asked me like, "Are you all right?" And yeah, they're just, I don't want to say they grow up so fast. It's like, man, just a couple episodes ago, we were, in this little barn, defending this whole senator, and now he's encountering a Sith Lord. He's got his own Padawan now. It's probably weird, it's like, man, this times have changed really. So I thought though that whole hallway scene was very um poignant, very great writing. It wasn't shoehorned in, everything flowed really well. Story wise, it filled in a lot of plot holes and a lot of gaps into the into the canon. So that spot was really cool.
Yeah, all right. So you basically just kind of blew through everything that you it's not even taking any kind of a thing. It's just like, nope, I've got a bunch of things I liked. I'm going to just spew them out all at once. Which, yeah, all right. So I guess that's going to force me now to just go through all my notes, and then I guess we'll
Yeah,
just
go
discuss
ahead.
things with the audience. But speaking of the audience, we got Ronaldo says, I never really believed that Dooku was thinking that he was doing the right thing. He was just an evil guy, but this totally changed my mind. Well, I mean, I can say this. So, I pretty much always thought that Dooku was not evil. I never really thought that he was doing anything out of absolute malice when you watch, say, Attack of the Clones, because that's where we're really introduced to him, right? So he was not the traditional bad guy. In fact, one of the things that I loved about the character when I first saw Attack of the Clones was the fact that he was really the first guy. I mean, unless you count Anakin, because Anakin, we see this happening, as time goes on. Excuse me. But more than anything, Dooku had already been where Anakin is going. And so you get the distinct impression that what's happening with Anakin or with Dooku, is that he was disillusioned for some reason. And he really thought that he was doing the right thing and that Palpatine was probably the key to achieving peace and order in the galaxy. And so that's definitely one of those things. And by the way, when we talk about Dooku being the one to actually erase the archive memory, the whole like Sifo Dyas thing, one of the things that was really cool was an Easter egg that I found. And I actually wanted to bring this to your attention, is the fact that the whole reason why that Sifo Dyas character was created was a typo. It was an actual typo. The character was really like SYDO, not FO, and then Diaz. It was supposed to be kind of like almost like an anagramish type of thing for Sidious. That's what it was supposed to be, because Lucas's original plan was to actually have Sidious being the one that ordered the clone troopers and set that whole thing in motion, which would actually make a lot more sense. Because, you know, he could go in and kind of pretend to be this other guy and everything else. And, I mean, I guess you can maybe say that that's sort of still what happened, although they created Sifo Dyas instead of Sido Dyas or whatever, you know, however you would pronounce it. But, you know, and it was kind of like the other thing that you had mentioned, too, about when he was talking to Qui-Gon. It was really nice to see the perspective of him going to Dooku, because, I mean, really your mind explodes for a lot of different reasons for this scene. First and foremost, you're getting almost that Lion King 1.5 thing going, right? You're seeing things, and they did this a lot with Clone Wars Season 7, because with Clone Wars Season 7, that was running all through Revenge of the Sith. So it was almost like you were seeing the perspective from the other characters, because instead of following Anakin and Obi-Wan and all those guys, you're following Ahsoka and Rex and everybody else. In this, it's like, okay, instead of just seeing that Qui-Gon, Padme, Obi-Wan perspective, now you're bringing in Dooku, Yaddle, some of the other characters that, well, of course you didn't know about Dooku until Attack of the Clones, but you think back, and it's great because I love the fact that Qui-Gon was still in communication with Dooku, and Dooku was still part of the Jedi Order, even during the time of the Phantom Menace. This is one of the things that you really didn't get the vibe from in Attack of the Clones. It almost seemed like Qui-Gon and Dooku had parted ways, and Dooku had fallen a lot sooner. But in actuality, you know, he was pretty much freshly fallen when Attack of the Clones hit, which, brilliantly, I think, adds more to his dialogue in Attack of the Clones when he's trying to get Obi-Wan to side with him and everything like that, because he's saying it really more from a perspective. If you rewatch Attack of the Clones, you can see this. He's saying it more from a perspective of, look, you know, the council's corrupt, you know, we got to do something and all this other stuff. Qui-Gon would have wanted, you know, he would have sided with me and all this other stuff. And you brought this up where we basically get a little bit of that. I mean, when you're seeing Dooku and Qui-Gon and they're talking about Maul and all this stuff, it's really kind of funny because you know full well that Dooku knows who Maul is. It's like, oh, Sith guy, you say? You know, I mean, I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, it was really nice to see that perspective, you know, that different perspective. And of course, we see that a little bit because this is one of the first times where in one of these episodes, they jump a significant amount of time because, and that's why I say it bookended the Phantom Menace, because the first little chunk before the Tales of the Jedi thing comes up deals mostly with right after Maul and Qui-Gon face each other. Then it sort of fast forwards a little bit. I mean, after Yaddle and Dooku and all them talk, it then fast forwards to after Qui-Gon dies and how Dooku has to process that and the needlessness of that. And that's part of what turns Dooku, in a sense. So yeah, I thought that was really cool. And, you know, obviously seeing Dooku's final fall was cool. Trying not to overuse the word cool here, but, you know, we'll see what I got. Because what we could do is I could blow through some of these because between yours and mine, we'll have all the discussion points we need out there, right? And then, of course, the audience is chatting in, so... So the other thing, which I didn't actually have, but I wanted to point out, was the fact that it was kind of cool to see Yaddle not talking like Yoda.
Yeah. Yeah, she doesn't have the whole backwards
which shows that that's not
on.
really a species-wide thing. I mean, it's just like... so I got...
Maybe, yes. Maybe she went to speech therapy or something.
Right, like got it out of her or whatever. Like sometimes when you see people from other countries, if they're either born here or they're raised here, they have more of an accent. Like they lose the... Yeah, exactly. It could be something like that. It's nice to know the fate of Yaddle and why she wasn't on the council by Attack of the Clones, because you see her in the Phantom Menace, and then all of a sudden, it's like, hey, man, where's Yaddle? And people brought that up for years. So that answers this. Great episode to fill in vital info for canon. The ending battle between Dooku and Yaddle kind of reminded me of Dooku and Yoda, by the way.
Absolutely.
But when that happened, when that battle was happening while Sidious was watching, that totally reminded me of that whole Revenge of the Sith. You know, Dooku and Anakin, or because we won't count Obi-Wan because he was dispatched like in 10 seconds. But when Sidious was watching and encouraging Anakin, you know, when Dooku kept looking up at him, what was funny was now, it's funny how you get all these retroactive vibes, right? But now you can look at it like Dooku's like, oh man, I know exactly where he's going with this because that's what happened with me, you know?
Yep.
Like, no way, you're gonna yaddle me, bro? You know, it's it's kind of one of those things. We could talk more about that too, because, you know, I can go on and on about how he faced the same choices as Anakin, and, you know, he handled it a little bit differently, although they both ended up in the same spot. And then, of course, the ending where Dooku strikes down Yaddle, dude, that was just so unbelievably brutal. You know, what a way to end an episode.
Yeah, that was wow. You really felt because one, I mean, and I'll even delve into Yaddle just a little bit. I don't want to interrupt. Are you done?
Yeah, well, almost. Because you're going to delve into
Go ahead.
Yaddle a little, just one more. Bring up Ronaldo. He said it was a bit weird when Yaddle just talked normally, but I just forgot about it. He's like, I guess it's easier to write the dialogue that way. So yeah, probably. All right, delve away.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Yaddle in this episode because Yaddle, one, she represent. I would call her almost like a hybrid. You know, she's like a hybrid Jedi in a way. And the reason why I say that is because Yaddle has that almost motherly instinct where she could definitely tell there was something up with Dooku anyway, like something just didn't feel right. She probably could feel the darkness in him. I mean, he's already kind of a brooding kind of guy anyway. He's kind of like Batman in a way. And so the fact that, you know, but he even seemed more brutish even for him. So the fact that she wanted to kind of investigate and kind of, you know, check into it was really cool. But even the fact that she was still trying to, you know, once again appeal, like, look, you know, whatever you've done, okay, let's just try to make it right now. Like we'll work on getting you back into the good graces of people, but we have to stop the hemorrhaging right now though. Like right now you've gone way too far. So we
See,
have to stop that and let's go back. The other part about it is that you bring up her disappearance from the council on Attack of the Clones, and there's two reasons for that. You know, there's
I
one,
know,
of
she
course,
technically
because
left the council. She mentioned that in the
she
episode.
technically left the council. Yeah, so she technically
But I mean, she
left,
had
so
an
it's
absence
like,
from everywhere, though. Like, she wasn't...
well, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, why did she see? There's a part of me that wonders. Like, I think she really agreed with Dooku in a lot of different ways. She just didn't have. She just knew she was outnumbered by everybody, maybe, and maybe that's why she just feel comfortable or confident enough to say anything. But I think she understood where Dooku was coming from. He just went too far the other way with it, and so she was like, "Well, look, I think she wanted to say like you're right in some ways, but this isn't this just isn't the way to do it." Um, so that part was cool because she actually stepped down from the council, and then she was trying, but then of course she ended up, you know, losing her life. But that whole moment where she was trying to appeal to him and really trying to rationalize with him, you know, was really amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it was no doubt amazing. And I mean, there's a couple of things, too, because just because she stepped down from the council doesn't mean that she necessarily stepped down from being a Jedi. She just stepped down from the council. So I was noting, really, I should have probably specified it more, but I was noting her absence more from everything. Because if you look at it, she's not in any books, any comics, They brought up Jocasta Nu fighting Darth Vader, for crying out loud. I mean, there's like, you know... But they never brought Yaddle back, and I'm thinking that that's because the story group was like, well, you know, slow your roll for a second because, you know, we have something here for that. But beyond that, yeah, absolutely, I totally agree. Yaddle the way that she handled it, I thought was cool too. Like, if more Jedi actually handled stuff this way, maybe we wouldn't actually be in the situation that, they found themselves in by episode 3, because she seemed a little bit more even-tempered, balanced. Hey, let's weigh this. Like you said, I love the way that she's just like, look, it was one step away from the whole Texas Chainsaw thing. Didn't happen.
Yep.
That she's like, look, you did some things. We can talk about it. We can go back. It's cool. We can fix this, because I really thought that it was cool, too, that another person in the Jedi Council found out about not just whoever the Enforcer Sith Lord is. It began with Maul, then it became Dooku, kind of the face. She's the only one that saw Sidious. And right then and there, you knew she wasn't going to survive. It's like, you might have had a shot if it was just Dooku. As soon as you saw that there was Sidious there, it's kind of like, yep, you're pretty much done.
You gotta go.
But
Even if Dooku didn't kill her, like, Palpatine would have had to.
Totally. That's what, exactly. Like, if he actually looked sort of like he was waiting it out a little. Like, I wonder what Dooku's going to do. I mean, him being arrogant and feeling things in the Force, he probably figured, yeah, I know Dooku's not going to betray me or whatever. But, Sidious, he probably is prepared for that contingency, though. And,
oh, yeah. Yeah, there's another thing I wanted to talk about, man. It's very, I don't know if people really paid attention to it, but man, the music for this episode, my goodness.
Yeah,
like,
the music is just incredible.
The tones that it had, like that ominous vibe that you got, even like when Dooku was going to get into his little shuttle or whatever to go over to see Palpatine. The clouds, how it was kind of had that dark overcast coming in, and
well, they've been really good at doing the whole like creepy,
that creepy thing. And then
the last couple of them have been more Halloweenish, though. This one, it just had kind of a darker overtone to it.
It's a dark, ominous, like something's brewing. Like the same feeling. I got the same feeling from Revenge of the Sith.
Yes, absolutely.
When Anakin was like staring out that window with Padme, and they kept doing that juxtaposition.
Yep.
That same music. It's right there.
Well, that's when it started to turn.
You felt the fall coming.
Yes.
Yeah, you felt the fall
you
coming.
Knew. You knew it had reached the pinnacle. And because for the first half of the movie, you knew things were just barely being held up. But still the whole hierarchy and everything, the Jedi Temple, the way it was all, you knew it was coming, but there was still, okay, we're not there yet. But once that happened, there was a definite tipping point to where, yeah, absolutely. It's like, yep, it's never going to be the same again. I got that same feeling when Anakin and Obi-Wan had that last conversation as friends before Obi-Wan took off to Utapau. And it was the same kind of thing, because you knew, they're kind of complimenting each other and stuff, and you're just like, man, you knew that the tipping point was done.
Good, right.
And so, yes, they captured that same kind of vibe that Episode 3 had. Revenge of the Sith, I should say.
The moment, though, when, like, okay, Dooku gets into the battle with Yaddle. The battle. I keep want to say the Battle of Yavin, but it's the Battle of Yaddle. When they got into that battle, and then he basically tries to close that door thing on her. You thought that was it, and then you hear like that triumphant, Star Wars music as she's like lifting this thing. Even Palpatine is trying to shield his eyes away from the light. It's just, it has such a a triumphant moment, but it was kind of anticlimactic, of course, because she of course falls down because she's just exhausted from the battle, and she pretty much can go no further. And you just knew right then it was like, all right, yeah, it's a wrap. At this point. And even his line to her, he was like, I came to give you justice and peace, whatever. And he's like, well, I can't give you justice, but I'll give you peace. It was just like, man, like, that was such a great line.
Yeah, that was
a great line.
there was just a lot. There was a lot in there that was just really, really good. I mean, and again, a lot of it is nuanced because I think that if you're, let's put it this way, I don't know if casual fans would necessarily get as much enjoyment as the more hardcore, or like even people like us, right? Where we're kind of nuanced in this, because I've had conversations with a lot of people at work where they like it and they're into it, but they could never talk about it the same way we do because they're just not attuned to a lot of the nuance. Oh, David chatted in. Let me get this. Oh, well, case in point. Hello, gentlemen. The music was meh. The episode was good. The fight scene was very cool. It's amazing to see the greatest of all time. He's talking about Palpatine. Now we just need a greatest of all time cameo in Andor. So, again, I guess it just depends on what you're, what you're getting from it. Because again, it's ironic. I just made the statement. Depending on where you fall in your fandom, and that's not to say that, all casual fans are going to feel one way and all hardcore fans are going to feel another way. You'll see casual fans that are really into it, hardcore fans that are like, take it or leave it. But the reason why I pretty much drew the line in this particular episode is because there is so much canonical stuff that you can delve from this, that if you're a hardcore, you're just gonna like freak out.
Oh, what did David say now?
No, it's not David. Guess who's here? Hi, Eric.
It's Chad.
Chad.
It's the Chad.
It's the Chad. The Chad feed. We got the Chad feed going.
There he is.
That's good. I actually, because Nick, another one of our coworkers, was driving down to Florida. He was like, yeah, I was listening to all these podcasts and all this stuff. I'm like, you didn't listen to ours, did you? Could have used the boost in views, man, but, whatever. But that's basically where it comes down. And that's, as far as seeing him in Andor, now I have long said that Andor doesn't need Vader or Palpatine. And I do stand by that. However,
the loophole.
I could actually see a Palpatine cameo in the finale, given how everything is being set up and how I know they're going to be going into season 2. I don't have any inside information. I don't know. I am the Tatooine of insider information, right? It's like the planet that is furthest from the center of the universe or whatever. Yeah, but again, it was good to see Palpatine in this episode. I thought that this was a fantastic use of him. It wasn't like in case of, emergency break glass kind of a thing, to where, they always like wheel out Palpatine or Vader whenever they got some sort of a weak storyline and they need to bulk it up a little. Nope. Ronaldo, before you delve into your point, Ronaldo says, yeah, it doesn't need them, but Palpatine makes sense. Yes.
Palpatine does. I mean, I could definitely see Palpatine, if he made an appearance, it would have to be at like the finale or something like that. Just once again reinforcing the whole Death Star thing, or that whole, because like I said, it's leading into Rogue One, so I could definitely see that. The thing about Palpatine, though, in this particular episode that I liked is that his presence was felt, definitely, but he didn't have to do too much. He just kind of just said his lines. He just comfortably stood by. But then that last shot, the eerie shot of him in the hood, and it just zooming into his face as it starts to fade out, and all you see is his like glowing eyes and stuff like that. It's just once again just adds to the whole ominous vibe of this particular episode. So yeah, I love Palpatine in it for what it accounted for. And if he were to pop up in Andor, it would make sense, but it would have to be pretty much like in the season finale of season 2.
Yeah, no, I agree. And another thing I should point out is, we've got a decent amount of people watching. Now I want to see a decent amount of likes on this video, because the ratio between how many people are watching versus how many likes we have, not liking it. So hit the like button, those of you who are watching. But yeah, I think that Palpatine definitely makes sense. That would be something that we would probably be able to get away with in Andor. But again, if you don't necessarily need him to tell the story, then let it go. Just let the Palpatine thing go. You don't necessarily need to include him on every single thing just because he happens to be alive during this time period. Although I will say this, and you brought it up, he really did do a great job of conveying his Palpatine-ness, if I may invent a word, in this episode. Because like you said, I think he might have said like a few words or something. But yet, he was very much the driver of that scene. I got to put this thing up from Chad because this is hilarious. Because he was commenting on the like button thing. He goes, LOL, nice segue. Yeah, well, actually, that one was a little bit bumpier than a lot of the ones I do. A lot of times I'll come up with these really cool, creative... Yeah, I mean, I had to admit. David did chat in something funny. He says, Yaddle had a bad wig. He must really want me to put that on there because he chatted that in twice. I know. There's some characters that when they actually try to put... It's because we're used to seeing Grogu, Yoda. They have no real hair, right? I mean, Yoda kind of does in the High Republic, but I don't know. The Yaddle thing, it did kind of look like she had some extensions going. Maybe...
She's an old lady. Leave her alone.
I'm just saying, I mean, she might have gone to that salon and, maybe she was trying for a look that just wasn't flattering. And to think she died with that hair.
Oh, yeah.
So, let's have a,
Absolutely. One thing I can say about this episode altogether.
Yeah, back to the actual subject, right?
Well, no, it really does cement a very important line. And it's true and not true at the same time. And it comes from episode 2 when Ki-Adi-Mundi said, Duke is a political idealist, not a murderer. Well, he's both. And
yeah,
we see that
clearly,
now.
yeah.
Yeah, and you can see that, how they viewed him was like, okay, politically, like, he disagreed with a lot of stuff. But he never, and that's one of the things too that I've always wondered, is because Dooku never had the eyes. Like when Anakin turned to the dark side, his eyes
the
changed.
yellow eye thing?
Palpatine, yeah, the yellow eye thing, yeah. Palpatine had it, Maul had it, my sister has it.
I was if you didn't do it, I was gonna do it.
So the fact that Dooku never had that kind of shows you that he was really kind of like, I mean, yes, he was a Sith Lord, but you kind of have to wonder, like, why didn't he have that? And it's like, it wasn't because he's not completely evil. It's just he did evil things.
Yeah, there was I don't remember if there have been
really
fan
evil.
theories. But I think I have to go back and look this up because I think StarWars.com or whatever, like in the data bank or somebody explained this. I do remember, and I think it actually did have an official explanation. David says, the use of the Force in the fight scenes are very entertaining. Is it just me, or is the voice acting bad? Doesn't seem effortless or natural. I think what you might be detecting in there is perhaps them trying to imitate the original character. Like, Christopher Lee only voiced Dooku in the very first Clone Wars episode. Other than that, it was... I forgot who it was, actually. And then... But I think that if you're detecting any kind of bad voice acting, I personally don't think it was bad, but If it seems bad, that's probably why. Because they are trying hard to,
recreate
recreate the original actor's voice. So, maybe that's what it was. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's time for everybody to give their ratings. Daryl, we always start with you.
I give this one a 10 for me. This is definitely a 10 episode. It covered a lot of different plot points between episodes 1 and 2. It gave a lot of canonical content that was very relevant. I thought the setup was really great. The action scenes were really cool. Yaddle had a really good send off in this. We never really saw much from her, and we never really heard much from her character. However, in this instance where she shows up big, and so I thought that was really well done. The use of, like I said, Qui-Gon and everything, the music for me really tied a lot of this stuff together. So for me, for this to be like only an 18-minute episode, 10 stars for me.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll give it a 10. Because I was actually tempted to do a 9.5, but then I started thinking, I mean, does 10 consistently remain elusive just because I want to say, well, I had some... But I'll say the same thing, and not only will I echo all of what you said, but I'll add pacing. It was a really well-paced episode. And that's a very difficult thing to do, by the way, in an 18-minute or whatever it was episode when you have this much story that you're trying to tell. And I will say that I think that a lot of the episodes of this series, we're on episode 4, they've all been pretty well-paced, actually. I mean, they haven't tried to tell too much in the amount of time that they had. But they've actually been doing, I think, just a really slamming job of, doing this. Ronaldo, in the spirit of Ronaldo's usual rating system, he gives it an 8.9.
Wow. Okay.
8.9. So what that's saying to me, Ronaldo, is you almost want to give it a 9, but it's just not quite there for you. It's missing something. So in the time you have left, what exactly is it that... Why didn't you give it that 0.1 point to actually give it a full 9? I'm very curious, because that's a very specific rating. So now David, of course, because he thought it was a meh episode, he's taking a little bit of exception to this. So he says 10. It's the Batman all over again. But by the way, we both like that movie. The soundtrack was functional. I'd give it an 8. Well,
Yeah, David always argues with me about the latest Batman movie because he doesn't understand my viewpoints on it, which is a conversation probably for another day. However, that's where that whole statement derives from. But okay, I'm sure we'll debate about this off screen.
I'm sure, but I mean, I can also leave it at an 8's not bad. I mean, honestly, I expected a lower rating considering some of the stuff. So, I mean, if you're giving it an 8, dude, it's still a pretty high rating. And then we got Ronaldo. Ronaldo's got a couple of chats in here, actually. He says, maybe a little bit of context on how Dooku and Palpatine meet. Says, I think that was needed to totally complete Dooku's story. Okay, so that would be the 0.1. If they had given that, I think it would have been a solid 9 for Ronaldo. And actually, he says, and I want Yaddle talking like Yoda. See, now that you said you didn't think about it, now that I brought it up, it's all you're thinking about. Okay, so to amend, Yaddle talking like Yoda and how Dooku and Palpatine met. That would have been the point one for him to give it a solid 9. And I don't mind some of the stuff being left in mystery. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to see, because keep in mind, you do have the Master and Apprentice book that deals with him training Qui-Gon, and he's starting to lose a little bit of the faith in the Jedi a little bit. You have Jedi Lost, which is basically Asajj Ventress reading a bunch of diary entries from Dooku, which is a really... If you could get past the fact that it was written like a TV script, because that's what it was, it's really, really good. Really good. Lots of canonical stuff in that, too. But when you skip that and you go to this, how Palpatine not only met him, but got to him. Because how did they meet? To me, that's fairly simple. He's the Chancellor. He's dealing with the Jedi Council and the Jedi all the time.
So he got to Anakin, basically.
Yeah. So, I mean, him meeting Dooku, talking to Dooku, I don't necessarily need an explanation for that. What I do need is, how did he get to him? How did he get to to Dooku? But, I mean, I honestly, it's kind of like you were saying earlier. Pieces are already there, you know, he's already got some doubt. But then again, how did that manifest itself to, yes, I'm going to go behind the council's back and betray them kind of thing? I mean, that's definitely something that that works out. Ronaldo says, that book works better as an audiobook, I think. You know, I really should try to listen to the audiobook version. I mean, besides the fact that the Star Wars audiobooks are incredible, I mean, they got like music and sound effects, and sometimes they even have multiple actors doing the voices. So I don't know. I mean, would you consider doing the audiobook?
Yeah, I would.
I mean, you'd probably get through it faster than a regular book.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I can't really say anything. I've been reading what's that book? The Sith. I don't even remember. Oh, Shadows of the Sith. I'm like, I don't even remember it's been so long since I read it last. I don't even remember the title of the book. But yeah, I would be open to that. That particular one especially. But again, let's get David's last comment in here. It says, the music and voice actors heard it. Palpatine, Yaddle, the fight scene, the character development of Dracula, he means Dooku, the suspense of Yaddle almost dying, the shock when she died, and Yaddle was a gangster. Lots of things to digest in that statement. Still, you gave it an 8. To me, that's pretty good. So yeah, you said that made it great, and that's where I think that's what you have to look at. And David's point is fair, right? There's some things that he had a problem with, but there's some things that sort of swung it to the other side for him and led to that. So in the spirit of that, what did you guys think? You know, we know what everybody that's been chatting in live thinks, but what about you guys? What about you guys watching this after the fact? Leave your comments in the comments section. What did you think of this episode? What parts did you like? What didn't you like? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you guys. All right, so here's the thing. I'm really going back and forth about this whole something dark side thing for Wednesday, because if we do that, we can't do it on YouTube because we'll get copy struck. Much like what happened to us last year when we did Blue Harvest. So now, because I know that they don't do copyright strikes on stuff that's on YouTube, like the holiday special was, I'm almost thinking maybe we do one of the fan films and we actually react live to that. We're going to, of course, have our special guest Dave Filoni with us, as we do every Thanksgiving Eve, you know, night before Thanksgiving, whatever, on the Wednesday. So we will be live. We will be live at 8. It's just not 100% sure what we're going to do, but that's where I'm leaning towards, because I really like it when we can interact with you guys live and everything else. It makes it a lot more fun. So, don't know, but check us out Wednesday night at 8, and then you'll see. I mean, we'll probably have the thumbnail and the actual event created, but you know how it goes. And then, of course, next Monday, we'll be right here, 8 o'clock, reviewing the 5th episode of Tales of the Jedi, so you don't want to miss that. So, till Wednesday, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.